have this issue now where he's got to recover, and honestly, coming from broken jaw, two sides of broken jaw is even worse, because you got to test it out. It's, you're not just chewing food or talking. Your jaw has to heal enough to take impact, to spar, to be able to actually box, and not just everyday life's usage of your jaw. Like I said, to just chew and talk. But so I don't know. That's why I was thinking, like, is this going to be the end of Jake, or because even if he comes back as a boxer, it'll probably could take a year, to be honest. Does he focus on his promotional company? I was thinking, the promotional company is probably one thing that I could always ride with. I never had criticism for it. Jake's promotional company, MVP. I think he's doing a lot of good things with his fighters, taking care of them, which is personally what I like. If fighters earn their money, and they should be compensated for it the right way, and a lot of promoters don't do that. But Jake has signed a lot of good fighters and compensates them very well, giving them opportunities and so on. So especially the women, but not just the women. A buddy of mine, Lucas Body's also signed with MVP. He's done well over there. So he's. I do like the promotional company. Will this maybe give Jake a chance to sort of double down on the promotional company, being that he's not going to be fighting, and put even more effort into the promotional company, and I don't know, just make this MVP platform an even bigger deal. I don't know.
They didn't expect this reaction. They expected jokes, memes, maybe a few victory laps for Anthony Joshua. What they didn't expect was Mike Tyson allegedly sounding the alarm, like a man who's seen this movie end with ambulances and regret. Because after that knockout, something changed. Jake Paul wasn't just beaten. He was stopped, folded in a way that silences arenas before the crowd even realizes what it just witnessed. One moment, he's selling confidence. The next, he's staring at lights like reality just punched him back. And then the whispers started. People close to the situation claim Mike Tyson didn't laugh, didn't celebrate, didn't post cryptic hype. Instead, he allegedly said something that froze the room cold. That Jake Paul should walk away now before the sport takes something it never gives back. That's not trash talk. That's fear disguised as concern. Because when a man who survived boxing's darkest eras starts urging retirement, it's not about losing a fight. It's about recognizing danger early. This doesn't feel like sports commentary. It feels like a warning that slipped out before PR could grab it, and if Tyson really saw something in that knockout that scared him, then this isn't about Jake Paul losing. It's about whether he should ever step back in the ring again. Jake Paul didn't stumble into boxing. He bulldozed into it with cameras rolling, confidence maxed out, and an audience trained to believe confidence is the same thing as competence. Every fight felt like a content drop. Every opponent looked like a stepping stone. Every win came wrapped in controversy headlines, and a growing sense that the sport itself was being bent to fit a storyline. And for a while, the storyline worked. He talked like a villain, trained just enough to look serious, and marketed himself like a walking pay-per-view machine. Boxing purists complained. Casual fans tuned in anyway. Haters watched just to see him fall. Supporters watched to see him keep rising. Either way, the machine kept printing attention. But here's the problem with illusions. They only survive until someone refuses to play along. Anthony Joshua didn't step into that ring to be content. He didn't show up to help a narrative. He showed up like a man who understands consequences, timing, and the quiet violence of experience. No theatrics, no influencer energy, just intent. From the opening seconds, the tone was wrong for Jake. The movement wasn't playful. The pressure wasn't negotiated. Joshua didn't chase headlines. He chased positioning. And every step forward made it clear this wasn't a spectacle anymore. This was correction. Jake's confidence didn't vanish instantly. It hesitated. And hesitation in boxing is like blood in water. You can't hide it. You can't edit it out. You can only survive it if your fundamentals are deeper than your ego. Then came the punch. Not flashy, not dramatic, just heavy, accurate, and final. The kind of shot that interrupts belief mid-sentence. Jake didn't crumple for the camera. He dropped because his body made a decision. His brand couldn't override. The silence hit first. That quiet second where everyone realizes the script just burned. The crowd didn't cheer immediately because even they needed a moment to recalibrate. This wasn't an upset. It was a revelation. Jake Paul was no longer playing a character. He was in a real fight with real consequences. And he just lost control of the narrative. While fans argued online about whether this counted, veterans saw something else. They saw a fighter who had finally met resistance that didn't care about his confidence. They saw timing exposed, distance misjudged, instincts overwhelmed, and one person allegedly saw something even darker. Mike Tyson, not the meme version, not the interview soundbite. The man who understands what happens when ambition outruns readiness. The man who has seen bodies fail before egos do, according to people close to the moment. Tyson's reaction wasn't excitement or mockery. It was discomfort. The kind you feel when a door opens and you recognize what's on the other side. Because this wasn't about losing a fight. This was about what comes next. Jake had built his entire boxing identity on escalation. Bigger names, louder challenges, riskier matchups. The knockout didn't humble that instinct. It threatened to inflame it. And that's where things get dangerous. Boxing doesn't punish arrogance immediately. It waits, it lets fighters climb higher, feel safer, feel unstoppable. Then it collects interest. Tyson, allegedly, recognized the pattern instantly. The way Jake fell. The way he reacted. The way the loss didn't look like learning. It looked like shock. People around the sport started whispering that this wasn't the kind of defeat you brush off with motivation quotes. This was the kind that forces a decision. Either recalibrate completely, or keep chasing a narrative that no longer protects you. Jake's post-fight demeanor didn't help. He spoke like someone trying to convince himself before convincing anyone else. The bravado was still there, but it sounded strained. Less belief, more insistence. Like repeating a joke after nobody laughs. And that's when the alleged comment started circulating. Not a threat, not an insult. A warning that Jake Paul should stop. Not because he can't box, but because boxing doesn't care who you are once it decides to teach you a lesson. That idea hit fans sideways, because Mike Tyson telling someone to retire isn't dramatic. It's terrifying. This is a man who made a career out of intimidation. When he speaks softly, it's because he's seen the end of the road. The controversy exploded not because Jake lost, but because the loss cracked the fantasy. Influencer boxing thrives on control. Controlled opponents. Controlled risks. Controlled outcomes. Joshua broke that contract without signing it. And now the question wasn't who does Jake fight next? The question was, should there even be a next? Because once the illusion shatters, the sport stops playing along. Opponents stop treating you like content. They treat you like a problem to solve violently, and Mike Tyson, if the whispers are true, didn't like where that road leads. Not for Jake, not for the sport. Not for anyone pretending this is still just entertainment. The knockout didn't end Jake Paul's boxing story. It exposed the chapter where stories stop being fun and start becoming cautionary, and everyone watching knew it. This wasn't hype collapsing. This was reality stepping forward, and it only gets louder from here. At first, the internet did what it always does. It laughed. Clips of the knockout were slowed down, zoomed in, remixed with dramatic music and sarcastic captions. Jake Paul's confident walk-ins were stitched next to his collapse, like a before and after ad nobody asked for. Comment sections turned into roast sessions. Boxing Twitter went into full chef mode. But then something shifted, because the more people replayed the knockout, the less it felt like comedy. It felt instructional, like a public lesson in what happens when hype finally meets weight, timing, and intent that doesn't care about your follower count. The jokes stopped landing the same. Fans noticed. Jake didn't pop back up angry. He didn't argue the count. He didn't gesture to the crowd. He stayed down just long enough for everyone to understand the punch wasn't symbolic. It was decisive. That's when discomfort crept in. Boxing veterans started chiming in. Not loudly, but carefully. Words like dangerous progression and experience gap replaced memes. Analysts who once rolled their eyes at influencer boxing suddenly sounded serious. Like they'd been waiting for this moment to say what they weren't allowed to say before and then the mic. Tyson angles started growing teeth. Clips circulated of Tyson reacting in real time. His expression unreadable, his body language tense. People read into everything. The lack of a smile, the absence of humor, the way he leaned forward like he just recognized a problem he couldn't unsee. Rumors spread that Tyson wasn't angry at the loss. He was alarmed by what Jake might do next, because Jake Paul doesn't retreat. He escalates. Every setback in his career has been followed by something louder, riskier, and more aggressive. And in boxing, escalation without recalibration is how careers end permanently, not just professionally. That's when public outrage took a strange turn. It wasn't outrage at Joshua. It wasn't outrage at Jake losing. It was outrage at the idea of Jake continuing. Fans started asking why this was being allowed to spiral. Why a sport with real consequences was being treated like a content experiment. Why someone with unlimited resources was allowed to learn lessons that usually cost fighters years of damage. The comparisons got darker. People likened it to stunt performers trying real combat. Others compared it to celebrities driving race cars without understanding crashes aren't scripted. One post went viral saying, "This stopped being fun when the punch landed exactly where it was supposed to." And through all of this, Jake's response felt off, not broken, not humbled. Defensive. He talked about learning experiences, about coming back stronger, about critics being wrong. All standard lines. But something was missing. The ease, the certainty. The feeling that he believed it rather than needed it to be true. Meanwhile, Tyson's alleged plea grew louder in the rumor mill. Not public, not dramatic, private, direct, and urgent. The kind of advice you give when you don't want to attend someone's comeback fight, because you've already seen how the story ends. And that's when the narrative flipped completely. This wasn't about boxing fans hating Jake Paul. This was about boxing fans fearing the sport would take something irreversible from someone who still thinks this is a game of momentum and branding. Because boxing doesn't care how you got there. It doesn't care who paid, who promoted, or who sold the most tickets. Once you're in the ring with someone who treats it seriously, everything becomes real at once. The memes died down. The silence grew louder. People began wondering if Jake had crossed the invisible line between spectacle and sacrifice. If the knockout wasn't just a loss, but a warning flare that only veterans like Tyson know how to read. And the scariest part, Jake looked like someone who hadn't read it yet, because the most dangerous phase of any fighter's career isn't when they're scared, it's when they're convinced the last loss was just bad luck. That's the phase Mike Tyson allegedly saw. And if that's true, then this wasn't concern for Jake's image. it was concern for Jake's future. The internet may have started laughing, but by the end of the week, it was watching quietly because the story no longer felt like entertainment. It felt like the moment before. Someone ignores the last good piece of advice they'll ever get, and in boxing, ignoring that advice never ends softly. After the jokes faded and the clips stopped autoplaying, something uncomfortable settled in. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from boredom, but from realization. Jake Paul was still talking, still posting, still promising comebacks. But the way people listened had changed, because this loss didn't dent his record. It dented the belief in boxing. Belief is currency. Once it's questioned, every punch carries interest. Jake's confidence was still loud, but now it sounded like someone arguing with gravity. The bravado hadn't disappeared, had hardened, and hardened confidence doesn't bend, it snaps. Fans noticed it immediately. Interviews felt defensive instead of dominant. The swagger looked practiced, not natural. He talked about levels and growth, but the words floated instead of landing. It was the difference between selling a dream and trying to convince yourself it still exists. Behind the scenes, a tone allegedly shifted too. Rumors swirled that certain matchups quietly cooled off, that negotiations stalled, that names once eager to step into the circus suddenly remembered the sport has consequences. Because Anthony Joshua didn't just knock Jake down, he reminded everyone what happens when a trained heavyweight stops playing along. And Mike Tyson. His presence loomed over the conversation like a ghost nobody wanted to name. Tyson didn't go on a media tour. He didn't shout warnings from rooftops. But his alleged concern became the unspoken headline. Fighters listened. Trainers nodded. Promoters recalculated. When a man who's lived both the glory and the damage looks uneasy, people pay attention. The public perception flipped completely. Jake Paul was no longer the disruptor shaking boxing. He was the experiment people suddenly worried might go too far. Influencer boxing stopped feeling rebellious and started feeling reckless. The spectacle lost its innocence. People began asking harder questions. What happens if Jake keeps chasing bigger names? What happens when the next opponent doesn't knock him down but keeps hitting him? What happens when recovery isn't instant and damage isn't cosmetic? Because boxing doesn't always punish loudly. Sometimes it takes quietly. Reaction time, chin durability, confidence. The things you don't notice disappearing until they're gone. Jake's inner circle, according to speculation, pushed forward energy. More training clips. More hype, more noise. But noise doesn't drown out reality once it's spoken. And Tyson's alleged message hung in the air like smoke. This wasn't about retiring in shame. It was about leaving with health. That distinction matters. Boxing history is filled with fighters who stayed one fight too long. Not because they couldn't win, but because they couldn't stop chasing what they used to be. Tyson knows that better than anyone. He lived the rise, the fall, and the cost of ignoring limits. So when fans connected the dots, the story became bigger than Jake Paul. It became a referendum on celebrity boxing itself. Is this evolution or exploitation? Is this opportunity or roulette? Is this courage or hubris dressed as ambition? Joshua's knockout didn't answer those questions. It forced them. Jake Paul still has options. He still has money. He still has influence. But influence doesn't protect nerve endings. And confidence doesn't heal trauma. The aftermath wasn't explosive. It was sobering. And sobriety is dangerous in a business built on hype. Because once the audience sobers up, they stop cheering blindly. They start watching carefully. They start questioning motives. They start wondering who benefits when someone keeps stepping into harm's way for entertainment. Jake's future now sits at a crossroads. Double down and prove he belongs at that level. knowing every fight now comes with real risk. Or step back, recalibrate, and walk away before the sport decides the lesson needs repeating. If the whispers are true, Mike Tyson already knows which path ends better, and that's why this story doesn't feel finished. Not because Jake lost, but because he hasn't decided what the loss means in boxing. That decision matters more than any punch, because the ring always remembers. And it never forgets who ignored the warning signs. This wasn't the end of a hype train. It was the moment the tracks became visible, and whatever comes next, it won't be laughed off. Now be honest. If you're still here, you didn't watch this for highlights. You stayed because this story hit different. This wasn't trash talk. This wasn't clout boxing. This was the moment the fun stopped and the warning lights turned on. So if that knockout made you pause even for a second, smash that like button like it owes you money and try to dodge the bill. Don't tap it. Punish it. The algorithm respects aggression. Jump in the comments too, because this question isn't going away. Was Mike Tyson overreacting? Or did he see the future before everyone else caught up? Say it reckless. Say it honest. The comment section is where the real fight happens, and if you're not subscribed yet, that's wild behavior. This channel doesn't wait for headlines to age. We catch scandals while they're still whispering. Today, it's boxing. Tomorrow, it's another meltdown nobody saw coming. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't hear about it after the apology videos drop. Because when the next industry moment cracks, Punch Press is already in the room, already connecting dots, already calling it early. Remember this: hype fades, damage doesn't. And boxing always collects its debt. This isn't just content. This is Punch Press, where confidence gets tested. Legends speak without shouting, and the truth hits harder than the punch. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and stay watching, because the next bell, it's already ringing. Next bell, it's already ringing.